called blue and yellow inside of a super view that's magenta. If we look at the requirements here, let's just do the math before we get started. Bless you. If I wanted my super view to be from the top left corner of this up here to the bottom right corner of that same view, let's say, how many times larger than this block over here is its height? Yeah. So if I want to make, let me show you, maybe I can highlight it. If I want to make something the size of one rectangle like this, and the information I do have is that I know the size of this blue rectangle. So the big rectangle should be 3 times the height of this guy. What about the width? I think we figured that out. How many times wider is it going to be than this blue guy? Great. So it's going to be 2 times as large width-wise and 3 times as tall, or 3 times greater height. What I probably do not want to do is I don't want to have a super view depend on its subview. So I'm just going to cheat and say, so right now, if I look at my document inspector or document outline on this left side, I see that magenta has in it blue and yellow. So literally, wherever I move magenta, those go along with it. So when I constrain magenta somewhere in the default view of the view controller, then yellow and blue are also going to get constrained, at least positionally. So my approach here is I want to set up the super view's position and then set up the sub view's position inside of that super view so that they all move together wherever I put them. So if I say magenta is going to have a, let's say, a width of 180 and a height of 3 times 90. Can anyone tell me what that is? Cool, let's go with 270. Please update. Thank you. So right now it's protesting. It's saying it needs an X position. Let's give it an X position. If I go back to structure, and if things start to get bunched up here, you can just click on the view and do the same 2-finger click and drag. I'm going to say I want to center it horizontally and center it vertically. Great. So now I see that it's 3 times as tall as one of these, or at least we did the math on that, and it's twice as wide, and it's got 2 subviews that we want to set up inside of it. It's centered horizontally and vertically. We can now set up constraints for those subviews. I'm going to go to blue, and I'm again going to make it not have explicit values for height and width, but instead I want it to get those values based on a relationship with magenta. So I'm going to say right now equal height and equal width, but really what's the comparison between purple and, let's say, blue right now, which is hidden? How much wider is purple than blue? Great. So I think the easier way to do the math is to go to the larger view and set up the proportion there. So I'm saying the constant magenta is twice as wide as blue. And it is 3 times as tall as blue. So now if we look at blue, we go to its proportional height and width, we'll see the same multiplier. And let's see how that works out. Let's set some constraints. I want blue to be all the way, I want its left edge to be all the way on the left edge of its super view. What constraint can I give to set this up, Ian? So I've got my blue view, which is currently hidden, but I'll tell you it's right behind the yellow one. I want its left edge to be perfectly aligned with the left edge of its super view.
So you would drag a line from the blue to the purple.
Okay?
Set the leading edge equal to the purple.
Great. So set the leading edge equal to the purple. Interesting. It says right now the leading space is 45. Okay, let's make it 0. Sounds good to me. We see that it's not quite working how we want. We can add some more constraints to make it work how we want, or we could go back.
You want the blue edge in the left of the blue one, the purple leading edge.
I want the left, yeah, so we did do that. We actually set that up right now. I'm seeing that my colors are not working maybe in the way I want, but right now I want to keep going and seeing if I can change that. Using auto layout is going to be a lot of trial and error. It's going to be adding one constraint and backtracking 2 until you really get the hang of it. I'm going to say right now I really want blue to be centered in magenta vertically. It seems like it's not working the way I want. What do you think is wrong right now, Kimball? Okay. So it's aligned to a super view, but right now, what? So it's aligned, it is aligned to, let's say, the super view is its container. But right now, it's supposed to be this block, and it's so much bigger than its super view. Does anyone have any ideas? Or is it a question? Okay. Okay. So if I get rid of these, it's going to probably give me an error. It doesn't have a height or a width or a Y position. But I do not want to set a value for those. Is there any way I can make them proportional to the super view? Does anyone have any ideas? Yes, Rob. Go less than 1. So go from blue to magenta. Maybe if I just drag it magenta to blue, that might help me set it up. And I do an aspect ratio. It's saying it's 2 to 9. Let's play with this. 2 to 9. What about 3 to 1? How does that look? Interesting. So it says it's 3 times smaller. Now it says it's 1/2 times smaller. All right, so I could play with that, and it seems like I'm getting the height to work, but I'm not getting the width to work. Maybe I'll try something else. Sunny, did you have an idea? Okay. Cool. So if I want to do a fractional value, an easier thing might be to go from the larger thing to the smaller thing and just set your value as the inverse of that fraction. So if I wanted blue to be half the width of the magenta, I would instead set magenta to be twice as big. I'd set its multiplier to be 2. It's probably easier than setting like 0.5 or something like that. I would say go from the big to the small, so that you're dealing with big round numbers. But that's kind of just my opinion. It's just how I think numbers work more easily for me. Let's also set up magenta to blue. Let's just run through this because I think you get how it works. I'm going to say make this multiplier 3. Great. So now it's set up in the way that we want. We've got yellow. Which needs to be constrained. How do I'm going to set up that horizontal spacing that we had before. I'm going to set up that its trailing edge should be equal to the trailing space of its container. I'm going to make sure both of those are 0. We're going to see it move around. What it doesn't have right now is any size values. So I'm going to again set up that proportion between magenta and yellow and say that magenta is 3 times as tall, so the height is 3 times, and that magenta is 2 times as wide. And now we see we've got some error. It says it needs position for Y. How can we line this up, this yellow, based on its super view? I don't want to align it with blue because I want it to just be anchored to its super view. But I want it to be perfectly aligned along the top and the bottom with the blue. So what did we do with blue to set that up? Cool, so let's align center Y. So align vertically to super view. Now I've got the same thing as before. Visually, it's the same thing. You can construct things in your UI in many different ways. If it is clean and easy to use and easy to understand, maybe this is not best practice, but I'm going to say that's a good thing. Other people might have much firmer opinions on things, but if you set it up in such a way that you can continue to build on it without having to know how every detail works, that's good UI. So if I wanted to add a super view to this, or if I wanted to add something just in the top left corner, or if I wanted to write some scribble with a label by putting it inside of the magenta super view, I've made my program much, much cleaner because I don't have to account for a block up here and a block down there, but instead by using a super view, I've made it much easier to add, remove, change up things because of their relationship to a super view.
So focus on the
Yeah, I would try to set up super view, sub view relationships rather than having everything on the same playing field. So that right now, if I drag my super view around, everything moves with it and stays how it should. Is the relationship to, sorry, say that again? Let's take a look. They have relationships largely to their super view, but they also have one relationship between each other. I know it's hard to see, but it is the horizontal spacing. And we could have removed that and just said, this blue one has a certain distance leading and trailing to its super view, as does yellow, but those would have been kind of ambiguous, and now we're saying they shouldn't touch. Their relationship is that they're horizontally spaced with a value of 0. Ian?
You said the right edge of the blue, the trailing edge of the blue, to be centered, the center of the super view, so in this case, the center of the purple.
Yeah. So you're saying center this edge in the center of the super view?
Find the right edge of the blue in the center of the purple.
Yeah. Where is that? Leading space, center, align X. And we could say blue dot trailing. It's great, and it gives us no, it doesn't fight us, it doesn't fight back because it knows that the constraint there is the same thing as the constraint to the yellow one. So the relationship ends up being the same visually. we do have two constraints doing the same thing. I think conceptually, if you did align the trailing of the super view to the center X, if you align, yeah, it's trailing to the super view center X and aligned yellow's leading to the super view's center X. Sorry, this is hurting my head. Then you'll get this exact same relationship without needing to say blue and yellow go together. That's also great. It's very clean. It tells you what's going on, and you could be relieved of the relationship between blue and yellow.
You said all the edges of the purple then with 0.
Well, since everything is proportional to it, it's a great point. Say I set this to 90. And so I set its height to 90. And you see the proportional things already updated. It's also giving me this little like guideline that's not red, but it's orange. And it's saying, you change the constraint. And that's where we go back here. And we get this menu. Do you want to update the frame? Do you want to update the constraint? Which one do you want to change so that it sets it either looks how you just set it up or it changes based on the constraints you've got. So if I update frames, it changes what's visually laid out based on the constraints I just changed. If I hit Control Z and I update constraints, if we look down the right side, it updates some of the constraints based on the changes I made. So if I look at like yellow, we look at its proportional height, it is still 3 times larger, but it moved it up. Yeah. Okay. This takes a lot of practice. And by practice, I mean it takes a lot of failing. It's really nice because I think it exercises muscles that aren't just code. Did anyone feel that way? Yeah. And like, this is where you can start to think like, what is going to be your interest when you become a developer? Do you want to really focus on this kind of stuff? Do you want to really focus on maybe more of the logic behind the scenes? Like, start to build the skills you like, but also know what you don't like, you know? Because there are different things. You're going to have to do all of this in a job, but you can really, really shine if you know how to do a specific thing well. Kimball. This is the front-end stuff. I would say technically all of like mobile development is front-end stuff, but because you're dealing with a whole device and how that device interacts with the user, interacts with data, which is what we get into in units 3 and 4, stuff like that, it does have like more of a full stack element to it than like creating a website. Take that, anyone who's listening who makes a website. But if you get really good at this as opposed to some other skills, like then you know you can start to build a niche. You can build that skill. You can have a focus, you can have a specialization, but an iOS developer does have to know how to make all aspects of an app. So you have to flex a lot of muscles. Or we don't stretch them, I don't know. Ian tried to give me a lesson on muscles and how to make them longer and more limber, and I didn't learn anything. I'm a bad learner. Michelle.
Are you also responsible for getting like information needed, or is that job that goes somewhere else in the back end?
So the back-end developer is probably the person actually setting up how the data works, but there's a lot of iOS development that is interpreting information you're getting from that back-end.
So we interpret it, not necessarily.
Well, there's also certain information we store, like settings in the P list, which we've talked about, or saving. There are like databases on your phone actually, and you can save information to that database so that you don't always have to get it from that back-end developer. So there's a whole stack within your little device, which is really fun. Let's take a break and we'll come back with more questions, then get started on today's lesson. Today's lesson is also going to be pretty brief. We're going to do a run through and then you're going to apply all the skills you have. Levi, you can go, it's fine. Cool.
So I was trying to go into like the app store and see if I could find some
The
screen.
App Store?
Yeah, on the Mac. To see if I could find like some screen recording because I really wanted to hear.
How did it go?
There are some. I haven't
Okay.
like gotten deep into it. But
Yeah.
there are some that are free, and then there's a lot that is paid. And I'm like, I know you are trying to avoid the paid ones.
That's okay.
So yeah.
I'll look into it. So I'm being lazy right now, I realize, because what I wanted to do is be able to live stream it. And
Oh,
once,
right.
And once we realized, like, I don't need to live stream, I was like, oh, QuickTime. And then I stopped looking at options. So if you have any suggestions, free or paid, let me know.
Gotcha.
They don't need to have really any more functionality than
Other
recording.
than recording
It's
it, yeah.
just,
Gotcha.
like, right now I'm realizing, oh, I could just use anything.
You know what I was looking and I was like, I've seen all of these I guess apps in the store because I was looking at Google like, hey Google, can you find me something to record? And they're just showing me a lot of things in the apps on the app store.
Okay.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I do like that.
I see. I like that we're like the video team.
Basically, I do like all
You
the
like this?
layouts.
Yeah. We're gonna. You can use it pretty much on anything we learn in interface. Like we're gonna talk about a way to. You'll see, but you can use auto layout even on like very small aspects. It's great.
Yeah, because
Do you like tinkering? Is that it?
I like design. So when you talk about auto layout, and that's all it is, and it's like no coding is needed. I'm like, oh my god, this is me. Because when I got into pursuit, I wanted to do full stack because I wanted to do websites and stuff like that. So this is kind of like home to me as far as like design and stuff like that.
Good. Good. Glad. Let's take a long break. Got it, Levi. That's a fidget, and I should not fidget. That? Don't do that? Okay. Okay. Where's that ticking coming from? Never mind. I heard a ticking noise. I'm over it. Auto layout, auto rules. Auto layout is the best. We got lecture in the morning. We got park in the evening. Go away. Go to your life. You know. No, because you'll miss a very important lesson. No, also like coding lesson. Okay, let's get started. Hooray, yay! I knew Albert would be so into it. Today, we are talking about how you make something called a table view. Ooh, ah. You can pretty much make every app out of a table view. Someone say something about tacos? So, you can make pretty much everything out of a table view, which is pretty dang cool. Instagram probably uses a table view. Facebook probably uses a table view. Anything that scrolls and has information that's repeated probably uses a table view. Do you guys want to make a table view? Yeah. I love the enthusiasm, even the negative enthusiasm. So let's make a single view app. I'm going to call this our first table view. Nice. I'm going to put it on my desktop. Can someone just quickly check in the curriculum if the link to yesterday's app works in like the 6.1 Unit 2 code thing? Pretty please. I'm sorry? Okay, cool. No, sorry, the code from lecture yesterday. My computer. Oh. All right. Actually, did I even push anything? Whatever, moving on. So, I guess I didn't. But you didn't really, you guys did all the work yesterday, and I applaud you for that. That was all of your wins, is working in auto layout. If the storyboard could load, before I get too far, what do you think the type, maybe the class, for a table view is? If you had to guess, it's something that we can get from the objects library, and it's also in UIKit. I'd say it's probably class UI table view. That makes sense. So if I went and I looked it up in my objects library by looking up a table view, I can get a table view, I can get a table view cell, and I can get a table view controller. So I could set up a whole screen, and on Monday we're going to talk about we're going to talk much more than the intro I gave you last week about apps with multiple view controllers. I could set up a whole view controller that's specifically meant to have a table view. What do you think about that, Aram? Nice, I agree. Cool. So we can create an outlet to our table view. Let's do that. So that we can look into what a table view is. Our table view. Nice. So our table view is of, Adam, what was it again? What was the type? Cool. Let's look into a UI table view. Wow. Oh, there's an enum in it for the style of table view. Wow. Interesting. There's another enum in it for scroll position. I think table views support scrolling, maybe? That's cool. There's an enum for row animation. Interesting. So how some kind of animation happens for a row. There's a search index. We can probably search things within a table view. There's so much we can do with a table view. What I want to tell you about today is table views make use of a protocol called UI scroll view delegate. That lets them scroll. I just went to the definition and I just Control F for the word delegate. I'm just quickly shooting around. So they conform to this UI scroll view delegate, which looks like it has some functions for how scrolling works, if I had to guess, because it's a protocol and it's named pretty explicitly. Wow, our UI table view also has a property called delegate, which is conforming to the protocol UI table view delegate. No way. It's also got, this is going to be really fun, a property called, where is it? How many entries are there? 12. Okay. Going back up. It's got another property called data source. We're going to look at these both. It's going to be really great. So it has two protocols that we conform to. One's called data source, which is going to be the way that the table view gets information. And the other is going to be delegate, which is the way that it delegates out actions to maybe the view controller, if we set the view controller as our delegate. So the delegate probably works exactly like what we saw with our text field. You can get certain functionality for your table views by setting your delegate equal to the view controller. And then, as we're going to see, there's a way that we can put information in our table view in such a way that we determine the data ahead of time. We can do it multiple times. So instead of using individual labels or outlet collections or anything like that, let's use our table view. Let's go back to the view controller. Great. So now, in order to conform first to the protocol UI table view data source, it's going to yell at me a little bit. It's going to say, I need to do some things. So now if I try to build it, going to fail. You're going to get this handy error, really the best error in all of this. It's going to bring up these two functions that we need in order to conform to UI table view data source. What these are saying is, tell me how many rows to put in our table. So if I've got a table here, return to me an int. Let's say we return 6. That's great. So there are going to be 6 rows in our table view. 6 rows of what? The things that go into a UI table view are called UI table view cells. Each row will contain in it a UI table view cell. Adam. Yep. I just did the same thing when I get an error about a protocol. I just fixed the stubs. That's it. So these are the two important protocol methods for getting the data for a table view, which we are told we have to do for our view controller to conform to UI table view data source. I have to say how many rows, and I have to say what's going to be in those rows. The how many rows is going to ultimately return an int. The what to put in those rows is going to be a UI table view cell. Let me show you the laziest way I can do this. Ready? Wow. So what do I expect to happen in my table view right here? Let's get some guesses. Carrie, any old guess. Tell me what you think this is going to look like. Yeah. So how many rows? Cool. Now we've never seen a UI table view cell before. So whatever a UI table view cell looks like, we're going to see 6 of those. Let's run it. No, go ahead. Oh, okay. In this second function, UI table view cell, yeah. Come on, computer. Come back. Come back. Oh, let's get rid of this shit. Sorry. So, there's nothing there yet. Or is there? You see 2 lines. Great. Those lines are the dividers between cells. Right now, we haven't specified anything about what those cells are. So, it doesn't really know what to put there content-wise. Let's see if we can update this. Let's have a look. I'm going to do it in reverse right now. Yeah. So, instead of just returning a UI table view cell, I could say, let our cell, or let's create a variable called cell that is a cell. Now let's go look at some properties. I'm going to close out Interface Builder so we can see this view controller a little better. Because right now we're just talking about hypothetically what table view is. Cell dot, you can set a whole bunch of properties here. Interesting. We can learn so much about a cell. A cell could have an image view. A cell has something called a reuse identifier. I wonder what that is. It has a separator inset, which is a UI edge inset. What is that? The inset values for the separator line drawn beneath the cell. So a cell sets its bottom border, it looks like. That's cool. You could have a text label, which is optional. The label used for the main contextual content I don't know. Maybe there's a label there. Let's try out UIView.backgroundView. So in this cell, by default, there is a background view. Let's look again at its type. Oh, it's just the UI view. So what do we know we can set on a UI view to change the color of the whole thing? Aaron? Aaron. Cool. I like that. Now let's change the color to red. Let's run it. Oh, it failed. What did I fail to do in my function here? I didn't return it. Dang. What am I going to return, Jack? Thank you all the Jacks out there. Let's run it. Come on, computer. Come on, computer. Come on, computer. Huh. Didn't do anything. That's so wild. What's that? You want to think on it? Okay. How about if we change something else? Cell dot, it has something about a label, text label, dot text equal to, hey, is there a label here? We run it now. I just want to find out things about this cell thing. How come it's not red? That's such a great question. How come I don't see a cell at all there? Such a great question. It's red there? What did I do wrong? I have to make it longer. What does that mean? Sunny, what's going on? All right, do you want to tell me something else? There's so much stuff that's not going on. I'd love to hear more about it. Oh, interesting. I'm using a protocol, but I never set my table view to conform to that protocol. So we're actually not going to use the delegate because there is a UI table view delegate. But instead, we're going to set something called, and let's see what that, where did I put that outlet? Our table view dot data source is equal to self. Just like before with the UI text field delegate, we need to set this property called data source so that our text field knows where to look to get its data. So now it's going to find out it's got 6 cells that are red. Maybe there's some text on it. Bless you. Come on through. Hey, is there a label here? Hey, is there a label here? That's not 6. And it's not red. That's so weird. I did it in our view did load. Oh, declare, I put it in our storyboard and made an outlet. So here's the outlet to that table view. So again, we're using this data source pretty similarly to how we use that delegate. We just set a property, to how we use the text fields delegate. We just set a property on that table view called data source to be self, and now we're using the protocol methods for that data source, that UI text view data source thing. We see how delegates and data sources are important protocols for our UI? I see it. Okay, we had 6 rows. Let's look at our storyboard. Talk to your partner, Liana. I bet she can help you. Where did you set the data source? Talk about that. So it looks like this table view isn't big enough because it's just being placed in one spot. What can we do to set where it should be in our user interface? To maybe constrain it. Angela, can you help me out with the constraints here? Let's just set something up, see if it works. I'll drag it to the view. What do you want to do? Center horizontally? Okay. It's protesting because we don't have enough constraints right now, so let's keep going. Center it vertically. Great. So we set its position, but what does it not know? Great. It doesn't know its size. Jocelyn, can you help me make the size for this table view? We're going to use auto layout. I'm sorry? Well, let's all help me, but starting with you, Jocelyn. How can we create the size of something using auto layout? What 2 properties do we have to set? Did you get some help from Malcolm? Great. So how can I get width and height? If I 2-finger click and drag, what do I drag to? What's that? To myself. Cool. So that's the width, and that's the height. Nice. Looks like it doesn't like what we're doing. Let's go look at this. Needs constraints for Y position. What? Why not? I don't know. Let's see if it does it for us. Add missing constraint. Cool. I think so. Let's go look at our constraints. Whoa. So what I did incorrectly was I forgot to add the height. My bad, Jocelyn. I didn't click it right. So we've got a set width. We've centered it in the X and the Y direction. And it's all we did was say that the alignment to the top is 75. Which means that if it's centered in the Y position and this distance to the top is 75, let me highlight. This height here must now be equal to the portion of the height here. So the values between the top and the middle, and then the middle and the bottom are the same because we said it's centered and we know how far the top of our table view is from the top. It's just me trying to guide you with auto layout. I don't think I can get you all the way there, but you will get yourself there. I have infinite trust in you. So now let's run it and see what happens. Run better. Oh, cool. So we got 6. That's great. That's nice. We can start to scroll in our table view. We've got these dividers. Look, it's Alex Paul.
Hello.
Hi, Alex Paul.
Good morning, everybody.
Do you want to do hot seat right now, Alex Paul?
I see.
Yeah.
I'm not even here. Go ahead.
Oh. Boo. Now I'm feeling the pressure. So we've got our table view. How many rows did we set manually in our table view, Phoenix? Nice. And we also set up a cell. What did that cell do for us, Ian? We tried to do two things. It's only doing one. What's that one thing? So displaying the text and displaying it where? Cool. And each row, let me show you the code. Each row has some stuff that we can look at. Where are we setting that text? Great. And to what property of our cell? Great. So we're setting the text of the text label equal to this. The cell's got that text label built in. What didn't work here, Adam, that made you so angry? What's a value we set here that's not working? Great. Does anyone know how to do that? No? Should we go talk to my friend? My really good friend? Do you want to talk to my best friend in the world? You're all my friends, but I really, really like this friend so much more. I'm sorry, I really like you, but no offense taken. How can we search for this? Kimball, I know you're just stretching, but I'm going to ask you. What's a good set of search terms we could use to figure out why this stuff isn't happening? Okay, that's great. Let's keep being lost. Keep going. What do you want to figure out? Nice. And what kind of cell? Nice. There's so many words. How to set background color in UI table view cell. And we'll just throw in Swift for good measure. What? How to change the background color of UI table view? Ooh, I think that's actually a little different than what we want. That's saying, how do I set the color of the table view itself, not a cell? Interesting. Set background color UI table view cell, question mark. Reddit, oh, Reddit. Let's see the efficacy of Reddit here. I want to hope that Swift is a well-regulated community. I hope so. So it's saying, let cell equal UI table view cell, cell.background colors equal .blue color. So I'm going to let you know this is an older version of cell of Swift. Let's see if it still works though. So we've got a cell. It said, set up the background color. Oh, interesting. Let's see if we make this red, what happens. I love this computer because it works so fast. Whoa, there it is. I love it. Do you love our table view? It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. All right, so here is an exercise you get to do with your beautiful table view, just using this data source protocol. Are you ready? I'm going to write it up for you. So, I just click and I drag it. So from within the table view. So if you have a table view, or if you don't have a table view, right now, what I'm going to give you is, shit, come back. Sorry. So, using your table view and this data, we've got let class equal, let class team equal, we can invite Alex today, we can invite Alan today, we can invite me, we can invite Ram, Ali, and is Tishna. So using that table view and this array, set up the data source methods so that your table view only has as many rows as there are people in class team, and so that I'll make it bigger, I promise. And so that each row has a table view cell with a random background color and your true feelings towards each member of the team as a label. You can just add this as a property on your view controller for now. It's probably a way we can make it better for an MVC purpose, but for now, just do that. Let's give it 11 minutes. Let's start with 7 minutes. I cannot. What was the question? I'm not going to show you the code. I'm just going to show you that you're using this protocol, and then it will fill in for you some stubs for the protocol. So the protocol is your protocol is I could come to it. Okay, let me give you all a hint. If you have not found already what this thing does, let's look at the protocol method called cell for row at index path. Let's look at what an index path is. An index path is the path to a specific node in a tree of, who cares? Each index in an index path represents the index into an array of children from one node in the tree to another deeper node. So it looks like this is some kind of thing. That's really annoying. Let's look through some of the properties of it. Init, function, do that, do that, do that, do that. This is really annoying, right? It looks kind of like string.index where you don't really want to know how it works. Index path is saying, where in my table view is this going to go? It's a little more robust than that, but if you want to get literally the number slot that you are currently adding this individual cell to, you can just look at indexPath.row, the value of the row element of the index path. So for each of my 6 cells, the index paths are, what do you think? 0 to 5? 1 to 6? You figure it out. Talk to you later. But maybe, let's say, you wanted to figure out which index you are looking at to make a cell. You could see if your index in the class team is equal to that row's value, which is also an integer. Hint, indexPath.row might get you some info. Cool. Let's give it like, how many more minutes do you think? So let's do 20 modulo 4, which is 0. 20 divided by 4, which is 5. 5 more minutes. Let's do 3 more minutes. 3 more minutes. Ooh, yes. Nice. Coding, it's real. Real good. Who's ready? Rowan, if you're not ready. Okay, 2 more minutes. I thought you were falling asleep. I thought you were asleep. No. No. Okay. Who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? Who's a face that I haven't seen up here in a while? Who's it gonna be? All right, let's bring it back up here. Can I get a volunteer that can come implement their solution for us? So I'm going to put the class team in there. Who has not been up here before? Adam, your incessant lying is hurting me. Said, who has not been up here before? Like today? Crystal, have you ever been up here? Your lying is so pathetically bad. Do you want to come up and give it a try? Okay. How about you only have to talk when you're stuck? Is that a good compromise? All right, let's give Crystal a hand. And for while Crystal is coding, you do not need your laptop, so please give her your attention.
I said, can you talk through it? Oh wait, how do I do this?
So you just type all it up there.
Oh, so wait, this is so weird. So look up there, don't look at your screen.
Correct.
Okay. did.
Hmm?
I did. This might work. Let's see. I didn't do it.
This might work. That's such a great job. Let's see.
I don't know if it's supposed to be something different first.
That's great. Can you tell us about what you did?
Okay, so where's the mouse?
Talk us through the code. If you drag all the way to the right.
Okay, got it. Okay, so where is it? We have the array for class team. Then I created another array for the random color. And I also picked the colors. And where is it? Did a for loop with class team enumerated, and David gave us a hint for index path, because when we first did index path, it just came up as 0, 1, 2, 3, and then we had I equal j, so the index path equals the actual name, and then we printed this. I'm not sure if we were supposed to print something different per person though, but that's it.
Cool.
You guys know.
Let's give Crystal a hand. Thanks. What? Thank you, Crystal. All right, I have a challenge for the class. Say I removed Alan. Let's run it and see what happens. Interesting. So I have 5 elements, and it went through and it picked each of the 5. And then there's one last one that goes and looks at Alex again. It's weird. Why did it do that? Because it has a fixed amount of rows. Interesting. I agree. I should have changed my implementation before. So how can I make it so that the number of rows reflects the data that I'm looking at? Kevin? Class team dot count. Awesome. So your data source protocol methods for a table view help you set up the data that's going to go into your table view. So it literally says how many rows are going to be in this section, which we're not going to worry about right now, of the table view, and what's going to go on each cell based on the data that you have. So you could potentially have a model that each of them store some information, much like we've seen with recipes before, or that all info we used the other day for, I don't even remember, what was it? The words in test twist. So you could have a model that stores some information, and you might get from your model the stuff from the model, and then look through that data and add it to your table view using just these two functions, which we get from the protocol table view data source. There are other table view data source functions which maybe you might use in other contexts. So let's have a look at some of them. Don't worry right now about what the arguments are, but each of those is a different different protocol method that we're getting from that data source protocol. And if you go ahead and look at the top, it says, here are all the things that are happening in these functions. So this specific function asks the data source for the title of the header of the specified section of the table view. I don't really know what it's talking about, but it seems like it has a particular job. This one asks the data source to return the index of the section having the given title and section title index. Don't know what that is. Tells the data source to move a row at a specific location in the table view to another location. Maybe you could use that. Maybe this is a function that could be used to move a row at an index path to another index path. We don't have to worry about the implementation right now, but can someone just refresh for me, where did we get that function? How did we have access to that? Why did we have access to that? Kimball? Give it a shot. Or you can pass to Mariel. Okay, I know. So the question was, why do we have access to that function I had highlighted and also these two functions? Where did they come from? Look, there's a fly on my screen. I wouldn't call it inheriting, but we're on the right track. Ooh. Ooh. We're conforming to the protocol, or we are adopting the protocol. Awesome. I love it. Let me show you one other thing, and then I'm going to release you forever. Are there questions right now, though? Albert. Can you make the rows equal to the amount of stuff that you have? Kind of like this?
If you go to your
Simulator.
make it just as.
Ooh. I would look into maybe, let's say, something like, how come there are lines at the bottom of my table view cell in my table view? We could go to main.storyboard, go to the attributes inspector. We could look through the attributes of our table view. And let's see, maybe separator is it? Let's try that out. Nice. So this was a property on the table view called separator. It has a default separator, which was kind of that gray line, but we just made it none. It doesn't mean, and check out what's happening with my table view. It doesn't mean that the rest of this view is not a table view. It's just not showing a separator line. So if I set like a background color to be light gray for my table view, we'll see that it's still constrained for all that space in the view controller if you look at Interface Builder. So this is all still my table view. Does anyone notice anything else? It's interesting. It keeps resetting each time I send it out of the screen. Random color is picked again. Blast. Any idea why this is happening?
So Facebook.
Facebook is a table view. I think everything's a table view pretty much if you scroll through it. Sunny, any ideas?
More data or memory efficient to not exactly what it is once it's out of the screen.
It's more data efficient or memory efficient to not keep track when it's out of the screen. Interesting. Interesting. Is it, can you say that one again? Is it loading the view every time it comes out of there? Also a good question. Olympia, what do you think?
Why would that be?
So look at this. This is so weird. Each time I do it, it seems like it's reloading the row. And I'm getting a new cell. Just the ones that are out of the screen. Totally agree. Huh. They're just randomly picked. So once they're out of the screen, so it what's every time? It loads the row again every time it appears? Interesting. Maybe this has something to do with our view controller and our view cycle? Oh. Oh my God. This probably happens at a certain time in the life cycle of a view. So it's creating a new view each time. That view is the UI table view cell. Whoa. Whoa. Okay. That was not the other thing I wanted to show you. The other thing I want to show you, I realize we did not take a break, but I'm not going to be around for a lot of the afternoon, so I want to make sure we get it all in now. Don't groan too hard. Tic-tac-toe. The other thing I want to show you is, I said the table view. Do you want to come learn? Sorry, my apologies. The other thing I said about table views is data source is a protocol that it uses. It also has something called a UI table view delegate. How do you think we create a delegate for the table view that I have as I scroll down to where I think I want to put it? Cool. Let's make the delegate for our table view self as well. Let's see if we can use it. So it ran, and what did it not say about our protocol? What did it not protest? It didn't protest because it looks like, just like with UI table, UI text field delegate, all of the functions, all of the behavior that we get from this delegate are also optional. So it doesn't demand that we do anything in order to conform. But what our delegate is going to do is it's going to handle what happens when we do certain stuff in the table view. So the data source loads it based on some data. The delegate does a really good job for us of handling something like, let's say, table view. Now we see a ton of these, which is a real pain in the butt. But this one is called table view did select row at index path. Nice. Data source lets us configure both the cells and the number of rows in our table view. So it's using some data to set up the table view. And as we noticed when we were scrolling, it's not just the first time the table view loads, but it's also saying each time you need to let's say for now, refresh the view, here's how in cell for row at, here's how you determine what's in that view. The table view delegate methods are going to work a little differently. They're not going to determine how you set up those views, but instead, they're going to say what happens when you touch a view. So we're going to say print, I don't know, classroom or class team at index path dot row. So each time we select a row, I want to see an output that just prints names. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. That's it. What do you notice about this did select? It's printing out stuff. What is it also doing? It's changing the color. So there's probably some attribute somewhere that lets you, I don't know, set the selection color. There's probably some attribute somewhere that might animate what happens when you press it. You can set all of that in here. You can say when you select a row at a specific index path, do anything. These delegate and data source functions, so long as you conform to the protocol and use their function signature in a specific way, you can do anything. I could say if you select it, just print happy birthday. So I could say for I in that, so for I in each of those strings in our classroom team, print happy birthday. All this function does is it counts the number of characters in the string in our array at the index of the row that we are clicking and prints happy birthday that many times. That's all this thing does. That's its job. You can use functions to do anything. I just want to emphasize that. That's why I'm saying it. So his Tishna's got eight characters. So it printed happy birthday 8 times. These functions didn't necessarily need to do something specifically relating to the UI, but I am making them do that. So maybe if I selected a row and the job of selecting that row was to change some data, this might link back to my model in some way. Maybe if I had like 5 people and those people each had a property called selected as favorite, and then each time you tapped a row, you would increase the times that they were selected as a favorite. You do that in a model using your controller, which is interpreting the interaction with the view. What are some questions you have? Yes. Do you have all of my protocols? Okay, so that did select row at came from our delegate, whose job it is to handle the user's interaction with a table view that has set its delegate to this view controller. Yep. This delegate is giving us ways to interact with a table view. any table view that sets its delegate as this view controller gets to use the table view delegate methods that we define in this view controller. There are, just like I was looking through with data source before, there are a ton more optional functions in here. All of them have pretty good names for what they're doing. So try them out. But before you try them out, think in plain English about what it is you're trying to do. And you can probably find, you can probably find the right function for that. How do we all feel about this? It's a lot easier than yesterday? Interesting. I guess the one last thing I want to show you, and I think we're going to go much more into it tomorrow, is those table view cells. We were just instantiating a new thing before, and maybe it's a little bit of a pain to do that. If you look in the attributes inspector, there it says it wants dynamic prototypes. Maybe I don't know what that is. This prototype cells, I'm going to tick it up by 1, and it puts in our table view an example of the cell that'll be used in it. Do you see that? Yeah. It gives, I'm going to go back. In a table view, if I go to the attributes inspector, there is an attribute, a property, called prototype cells. If I just press the up arrow, it automatically adds a table view cell to my table view. You can set it up so that whatever you do in this cell, so I could add a label, I could add some other stuff to it. Let's say I add specifically a label. Come on. Get in there. So now there's a label that is a subview of the content view, that is a subview of the table view cell, which as it currently appears is a subview of our table view. What? Wow. This prototype cell, you can use it to set up the exact format of how you want your cell, each cell to work. Let me show you the way you do that. Say I've got a label that only goes up to here, and I say should be cut off after 9 points. So I set the constraint from my label to my content view to be, let's say the leading space is that much. Let's say the top space is that much. Let's say the bottom space is that much. And I'm only going to make the width of this 9 points. It's going to look really stupid. In order to use this, where do you think I'm going to try to use this? Probably in our data source. We already have the function. What is that function? We use 2 data source functions. Sorry. We have 2 data source functions here. Which one gave us a cell? The second one. What does the type of that cell have to be? UI table view cell. So this function can return anything so long as it's a UI table view cell. If we look at our table view cell, the prototype we created, We go to the identity inspector. It is a UI table view cell. Awesome. The way we get this cell is we go and look at our table view, and we use this function called DQ reusable cell with identifier. It's saying, look at the table view that you've set up, right? This guy called our table view. Look at that and give me back the specific cell that has this name. So we've defined a prototype cell. That's nice. We've defined a prototype cell that's associated with our table view. And so we have to look at our table view to get that cell. What we have to do is give the cell a specific way for us to identify it. Does anyone know how to do that right now? All right. Well, what is this function asking for? It's asking for a string, and it's saying DQ reusable cell with the identifier and a string. Let's look for something called a reuse identifier, because that's going to be what we look for when we DQ a reusable cell with the identifier. Does anyone see anything? Interesting. Reuse identifier. Wow. So I can set up probably something that's a string here. I'll call it rCell. And what this function does is it goes, looks at our table view to which we are connected, and it says DQ, and you have to give it exactly the string, or else it's not going to work. So now we've got the cell. What do we notice this returns? Let me make this bigger. We don't need storyboard right now. What's it getting angry at us for? Let's look at the return type of this function. DQ reuse the. Oh, interesting. So it says, I don't know that your string is actually going to get me a cell. I don't trust you. So I'm going to make the return type of this optional. Because say this doesn't work, I don't want to be put in the unfortunate situation where you're not letting me return a cell. So I'll have to use some optional chaining to do anything with this cell, which might be a pain in the butt. A really hacky way of dealing with this might be to have a nil coalescing that just creates an empty UI table view cell. But if I want to do specific things on the cell that we've set up, and I want to configure it in a certain way, then I probably want to use optional binding to say, if I want to set up this specific cell in a specific way, I'm going to do all of that in an if-let statement. Otherwise, I'll probably just return some UI table view cell, which sucks. So this is how you're going to get a custom cell that you create as a prototype for the rest of it. Now, every time, I'll get rid of that. Every time, let's say, in our storyboard, we set up, I know it's small, I'm sorry. We add a button to it. Oh, my machine's dying. Add a button to it. Great. Zoom in, please. All right, there's a button in it. Now when we run it, if it's able to figure out that there is a cell called our cell, we should see for each of them just literally a label C, a label with the letter C, because this is only 9 points wide, and a button. Nope. Why not? Let's go back to our code. Is there a midday check-in? Okay. The computer is dying. What? It overlaps the text. Interesting. Okay, let's stop here. We'll pick up these custom cells in the afternoon, and then we're going to